you really have to love what you do. You have to love what you do. You got to wake up every morning doing what you love doing. Is that easy? No. I've come up to two roads in my life, the path of least resistance and the path of most resistance. I never hesitate. I choose the path of most resistance because that's where I'm going to learn the most.
I'm Paul Quin with The Sessions. I'm joined by the great Liberty Devitto. And you know, we interview many great artists, and today we get to interview Dom Famularo. And he knows a lot, he's done a lot, and so, Dom, we're just gonna kick it off to you. Now, we always talk about where music became a part of our lives. Tell us, how did music become a part of your life?
Very simply, an Italian family, the responsibility of the kids were to entertain the adults. Every Sunday, all the family would get together, and we all just kind of like sang and danced, and then February of 1964, as the story has been told many times by many people, when we all watched the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, my two older brothers, myself and my younger sister decided we're going to put a band together, and I was attracted to the drums. It was that simple, but that magical, because it really overtook our lives. And then we had to start putting songs together. They were all Beatles songs, and our job was to entertain the family every Sunday, so we had to practice during the week to play for the family on that following Sunday.
You know, you've interviewed many people, and all of them talk about the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah.
Where would you be today if there'd been no Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show?
I don't know. My father was a hardworking auto mechanic, and at times I'd go by to help him with his business, so that might have led towards that. You know, I had a tremendous stuttering and stammering challenge as a kid, so I was a very shy, you know, a little bit awkward because I was afraid to speak, so I don't know where that would have led me. But I don't think it would have given me the opportunity to see the light at the end of that tunnel, that there was hope, that there was a potential in myself, that there could be some great things to happen.
You know, and I know we'll come back to this, but everybody that spends any time with you is inspired by you as a person, not just as a player, but as a person. I think many people would be shocked to know that you had to overcome. I mean, a man that's famous for public speaking had to overcome a stammering problem. What role did music play in overcoming that problem?
A huge role, because as I practiced and started to play with my two older brothers and my younger sister, people really kind of gave us attention, that they really enjoyed seeing young kids play music. And that gave me a hope and a purpose. When you have a calling like that, where all of a sudden now you believe that, and you know too, when you start to play and people react to that, there's something that just kind of elevates you to want to push yourself to see what can that next level be. And that was powerful. And the stammering challenge, I was afraid to speak, but when I played drums, everyone listened. So the focus of the discipline of practicing really was a part of what resolved my speaking challenges.
Dom, I've known you since, we were like 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
I went on the road with Billy Joel and succeeded in playing Madison Square Garden. You are a self-made man with your lessons, 2,500 kids around the world,
Crazy.
everything like. How did you do that? How did you do that? And when did you decide, this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a motivator.
It's kind of interesting, because I don't think in our life, at least for myself, I didn't decide this is what I want to do. It all kind of evolved, and it happened and evolved very naturally. I started playing in several bands. I was playing with B.B. King and George Benson, all different acts and what it was. But at 17, when I started teaching, students would come up to me at my performance and say, "Boy, Dom, I like what you're doing. What are you doing with your left hand? How do you get that ride cymbal, that feel?" So I started speaking about the art form. I was studying with some great, great people, and I was just kind of sharing that information. When I saw those students light up, I decided that I wanted to take this more formally. So from the age of 17, I started a formal teaching practice where I was charging money, starting to organize myself, being more disciplined in business. And I was making money from teaching. I was also making money from playing. And I said, this is pretty cool that I can do both of this and get equal enjoyment from that.
You studied with Jim Chapin and actually almost became a son-like to him. And you are carrying the torch for him now as far as a teacher goes. I've always felt that Dom Famularo, like when they talk about God and Jesus became man, you know, Dom Famularo, there was a drum, and then the drum became Dom Famularo, you know.
That's deep.
And but I know that through Jim Chapin, you studied with Shelley Mann, and you studied with Joe Murillo, and you teach and inspire so many kids. I mean, how do you do that?
I saw what my teachers did. Morello and Chapin and Shelley Man. There were so many others. Al Miller, Ronnie Benedict, Charlie Perry. These were great people that were so into what they did. And when you get kind of sucked up into that world, you can't help but be excited by gentlemen that were much older than me, living the life of playing drums and being involved with music. And that was a role model. They weren't involved in insurance. They weren't involved in mechanics, building cars. They were into music and drumming. So I said, boy, if they can do it, I can do it. So I just listened really carefully, and whatever they said, I adapted. And that's a very powerful part that I always try and tell the students. I'm giving you information, not just so I can hear myself talk. I'm trying to give you the path. You have to now accept that.
You know, the word that people would use often to describe you, the people that know you now and have known you in this role, is passion, right? You're passionate. So when did the passion start to develop? And is it passion for music or is it passion for people?
Boy, great point. It really comes from my parents. My parents were just so great. They never taught us love. They were too busy showing it. So the feeling of love was always in the household, and the feeling of love was always deep and powerful, and it was really exciting that we were around that all the time. Listen, our house was like the UN. You know, musician friends, we had different religions, different cultures, different ethnic backgrounds at the table. My mother would say, boy, you're here, let's sit down and eat. So we had literally all different, people from around the world, from their background at our table that we were playing music with, that my mom was feeding. So there was always that greatness of whatever you choose to do, just make sure you do it the best you can.
But were there other musicians in your family?
Absolutely. My mother was a phenomenal singer. She and her sisters had a Broadway show that they had sang back in the 40s. They were accepted for a callback, and when they went back for the callback, my grandfather had heard about it. Old school Italian said, "You're not going. You're women. You stay home and get married." So he prevented them from going. So they had incredible harmonies, much like the Andrews sisters of years ago. So that was there. My uncles on my mother's side had great skills of playing instruments, naturally. On my father's side, they were more disciplined and really engineers. So that part of the discipline came from my father's side, the part of the passion came from my mother's side, and that combination really seems to work.
So was there always passion? Were you a passionate teenager, or did that come later?
I think I was compassionate. Compassionate to feel what other people feel. We were taught to be sensitive to other people's needs, and when you're sensitive to other people's needs all the time, I think passion comes out of that, because when you start to see your purpose, when you tap into your purpose and you see your purpose working, then the passion is fueled.
You never, ever go up to a kid who is asking you a question or wants to know something about drums and have a negative answer for him. You always have a positive thought or answer. I just want to know if in the back of your head you ever think, this kid will never play drums, but you constantly encourage them to fulfill their dream or live out their dream. How do you maintain that level all the time?
If someone looked at me as a young child and saw my inability to play and said to me, "You would never do it," they would have been wrong. So to me, I don't know what that person's capable of. So if I can fuel that one part of their life that could drive them to overcome their challenges and they can find success, then I'm a part of their success. If I give them any negativity and that puts out that flame, I don't think I could live with that. That would be absolutely incredible to have to live with that I prevented that person from achieving what they had, that dream. So I give everyone the chance. Not everyone's going to be a fantastic artist at what they do, but the journey of learning, maybe what they'll do at that journey is become a better person, and that might fuel into a different part of their life, and that positive comment may have spawned something else. So I stay in the uplifting, give someone the best chance that they can have.
So it's amazing how while giving drum lessons, you're also giving life lessons.
It has turned out that way in several years, and it's partly because I think I have to empower the person as a person to get them to empower themselves with their music. I think it goes hand in hand.
It seems like an unlit fuse is a person's potential, and no one has the ability to light that fuse better than you do. How did your teachers teach you to inspire in that way?
Shelley Man. I drove out to California with a band because I knew Shelley Man was out there. I knew he was just a phenomenal player and a teacher, and he had information that I wanted to have. So I hopped in a van with some friends and we drove across, the old story of just throwing our equipment in there and drove across. We had no job, we had nothing planned, we had to use some money in our pocket, and we just went. And my vision and my focus was, I got to touch base with this guy because this guy's got some answers that are going to help me out. I had already been with Morello and Chapin and some other great players, and Max Roach. I mean, all these guys were just Papa Joe Jones. They were so great on the East Coast, and they gave me incredible information. But there was an ingredient and a piece of the puzzle that I felt was missing. So I drove to California. And when you speak to someone who's got such enthusiasm about what they do, you get sucked into it. Enthusiasm comes from the word enthusiasm, or the Greek word, which means filled with God. And when you see someone that's just filled with a spirit of something so great that they're into it so much, you get sucked into that so deeply. That's how they work.
Of course, you now have the added benefit of the internet in being able to broaden your teaching perspectives beyond those which were ever imagined by your teachers.
Yeah.
Tell us how you got into adapting and learning that technology.
As I started to understand traveling the world and doing these different clinics and playing with some great artists and traveling, I would meet drummers in different states and then eventually in different countries that would say, Dom, I want to take some lessons with you. But at the time, without the internet or without Skype and Zoom and FaceTime and all that we have now, I said, we have video. Why don't you guys send me a videotape of your playing for about 15 minutes and then include an audio cassette, a blank audio cassette. And then send me the 15 minutes of your playing. I'm going to go and I'm going to watch it. And I'm going to analyze it, and then I'll speak onto the videotape what I think you should do, and I'll mail that back to you, and just include a check with that, and that's how I'll teach you from far and distance. So I started talking about that. At one point, I had about 150 video cassettes on my desk. So here it was at nighttime, my family would go to bed, and I'd go back down to my desk. And in 3 or 4 hours of them sleeping and me, I'm making money while I was connecting with people. So it was funding me to do this. So I was inspired to work. I've got an incredible work ethic. I wake up early, I go to bed late, and I'm inspired to task and write things down that I want to do. So with that, as I'm doing that, I'm looking at that list, I'm meeting these people, and then from that, as the internet came about, it was easy to start opening up the connection to welcome technology. And it's my 3 boys that are my IT team. They fill me in on what I need. I have a question, I contact them. They are way more savvy with technology, and as they guide me along the way, then I find success in that. So they really help me to open the doors of making more money by reaching more people.
So tell us, how do you do that, though? I mean, if a student contacts you from a foreign country, how does it all work? How you teach them from your facility?
I had to realize the balance of what I was experiencing. There was the balance of artistic development, so I had to keep my artistic skills up. There's the balance of business. I had to see myself as a CEO of a company. And then there was a personal side where I have my family and my boys that I want to make sure that's balanced. So I have to divide the time and find that balance. So as an artist, I'd find time to practice, and I would schedule time. I'm a scheduler. On my calendar, I write down today at this time I have an opening, I'm going to put an hour of practicing. And when that opening happens, I go and I practice. I utilize that time the best I can to squeeze the most out of that. Then I go to the business side and I say, okay, now that I got my practicing schedule in, on the business side, I'm at my desk at 6 in the morning and I start to schedule and list things that I need to handle business-wise. So when a student would contact me, I then realized that I needed help. I would organize it myself in the beginning. Then I found out I can get an assistant. My first assistant was a student of mine that I bartered time to work on assisting me. And then from that one, I started making a little bit more money. I was able to pay an assistant. Now my wonderful wife, Charmaine, is my assistant, and she organizes the schedule, 2,500 names on a list of students. She emails out the dates that I have in that month at a glance. I give her 15 dates that month. She then emails them out and she plugs in those students into the list. So now when I go to teach, she gives me the schedule and the calendar. I go out to my studio from 9 until 6, straight through nonstop. It is exciting to organize it that way, and then that gives me time that in the time that I give her the calendar of when I can teach, I will also put business time in there, practicing time, and of course family time. So I keep the balance of that artistic, business, and personal side so everyone's happy.
Keith Richards said he was holding his guitar and he was asked a question about mastering the guitar, and he said, you can never really master the guitar, you're always learning on the guitar. Do you feel like you are still learning about the drums?
Well, great question, Lip. You know, I just wrote an article for the magazine Drum Scene magazine in Australia, and Frank Corniola, a wonderful, dear, dedicated, musician and businessman himself in the drumming community, he runs the magazine. He said, Dom, I want you to write an article in every issue. And the last issue was about the constant learner. And I've met so many people. Joe Morello, literally the week before he passed away, I spoke to him on the phone. He was asking me about my feet technique. How do you get your feet to that level of of where your hands are at. And we're talking on the phone. He's in the hospital, and we're talking on the phone. I said, well, Joe, I kind of like applied a lot of your techniques of the free stroke and the rebound that you learned from George Lawrence Stone. I started putting it in my feet, and he was excited to hear that. A few days later, he passed away. That inspired me. Jim Chapin, I go to the hospital. Jim Chapin's in Florida at a hospital. I visit him every month. I go to the hospital. I walk in. As I walk in, after going once a month for several years now, I walk in, and the doctor happened to be down in the lobby area. He sees me coming in, and he had seen me every month. He said, boy, Dom, I got to tell you, Jim's not doing well. He only has maybe hours left. I said, well, we knew this was coming. So I said, I'm going to go up and see him. And the doctor says, come on, I'll join you. So we both go to the elevator, we're walking up, and it's a somber time, and I'm going, well, Jim, he's this legend of what he did and how much he shared with people. The elevator door opens up on the 3rd floor, and we hear a practice pad going along. We hear this practice pad like playing at this ferocious pace. And so I said to the doctor, I said, well, as we're walking to the room, he must have a student in there playing. How great is this that towards the end he's hearing someone perform for him? We walk in the room, and it's Jim. He's sitting up in the bed, he's got the practice pad on his lap, and he's playing match grip and playing, but I mean ferociously. So as we walk in, I turn to the doctor, I said, this is a guy with hours left? Look at him. So I walk over to Jim, and I would always kiss him on his forehead and say, Jim, what are you doing? And he looked at me and he said, I'm practicing, and my left hand's getting better. That was July 3rd. Literally the next day, I flew home that night. Literally the next day on July 4th, Jim passed away.
On Independence Day.
Ironically enough, that here he was called the father of independence because his book, Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, one of the greatest independence books written in 1948, the greatest drum set book still written. And he dies on Independence Day, the father of independence.
You know, Dom, it strikes me, a lot of the people that will watch this video on YouTube, a lot of the names you throw out are names that they've read about in books. They're names they may see on YouTube, but these are legends.
Yeah.
These were people that were friends of yours.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's hardly a legendary drummer that wasn't a friend of yours. And I know you had some experience meeting the great Buddy Rich. Maybe you could tell some stories about Buddy.
Buddy Rich, I mean, aside from the fact that he really set this pace of being this phenomenal drummer, and he really pushed the art form forward. One of my teachers on Long Island, one of my greatest mentors, was Al Miller. Al Miller, you knew him.
Great man.
He was a wonderful rudimentalist. He had a great teaching practice. At one point, he had, I think, 13 teachers teaching for him, you know, just out of his business. And he had 80 students a week that he taught, and he was playing with a big band and local gigs around town. He was a real motivating force. And I got to be, you know, very close to Al and become friends with him, and he became just a dear guidance for me. At one point, he says to me, Dom, I want you to come over to my house for dinner and meet a buddy friend of mine. This is 1971. I'm 18 years old. I go to his house, and before I get to his house, there was a club just around the corner called Poor Peter's. And it said on the marquee, tonight, Buddy Rich Big Band. It's like, oh man, I know Al loves Buddy Rich. I'm gonna go buy some tickets. So I go and I buy 3 tickets, one for me, one for Al, and one for his buddy friend. So he says, come over, I want you to meet a buddy friend of mine. Okay, so I buy the tickets. I get to his house, I knock on the door, and I said, Al, have I got a surprise for you? And he says, I got a surprise for you. I walk in and I turn, and there's Buddy Rich sitting on Al Miller's couch in Plainview, Long Island, in suburbia, New York. And I immediately go into my routine, my Ralph Crandon from the Honeymoons. My stammering came back real fast. Because meeting Buddy, I had just seen him the night before in the Johnny Carson show. He had just done a show with Frank Sinatra in Latin America. I mean, this was like the deepest guy. We meet, we hang, we talk, we have dinner. Al cooks, and I find out that Al and Buddy were in the Marines together for 2 years, and they became very close. Whenever Buddy would come in town, he'd call up Al. Al thought I was one of his top students. He'd call me up, and we'd go to see Buddy. So just meeting that. Now, when you're backstage at a Buddy show, that's what opened the door. You meet everybody. I met Elvin Jones, Max Roach, Morello's where I met there. I mean, all these great, great drummers. I mean, my gosh, Papa Joe Jones, Philly Joe Jones, Gad. All these guys would be backstage going to see Buddy. Now I'm backstage. It was like the fly on the wall. I kept my mouth closed. I just listened. I meet these people. I'd shake their hands. I wish I had the technology we had now to take selfies. We didn't. But just to meet these people, I just said, if I just listen and just really hear what they have to say, what you hear from them is you hear their passion. They talked about drums. They were hugging each other. And then backstage at a Buddy show, not only do you meet all the top drummers, meet all the top entertainers like Duke Ellington we met, Count Basie, Stan Kenton, Benny Goodman. They would all be backstage. Then you meet the next level, the Rat Pack. Sinatra, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis. At certain times in New York, they'd be in town. They'd go backstage to see Buddy, and I'm shaking Sinatra's hand. This was like so incredible. And I just knew that as long as I listened, I could feel the essence of how these guys communicated. And it was totally because of deep passion and respect for each other.
Now, I'm sure that a lot of drummers, when they come to you for lessons, they might say they want to know how to play like the drummer of the day.
Right, right.
Do you recommend them going back and learning and studying the old school drummers to find out how they played and how it evolved?
So, Don, let's say I come to you and I go, I want to play, and I only want to play like Bonzo. Right? I want to play like John Bonham. Teach me to play like John Bonham. Don't burden me with any of that old stuff.
Absolutely.
What are you going to tell me?
We go by and I say, excellent. You want John Bonham? We're going to analyze John Bonham's playing. I know exactly what you want. We're going to listen to Joe Morello and Buddy Rich.
Yeah, but I don't want to listen to them. I want to listen to John Bonham.
Absolutely. And I said, boy, I get that right now. I get that right now. But you know something? I'm going to show you how Bonham learned. Let's go back and see who inspired Bonham. Because if you want to understand his playing, if we analyze Morello, you're going to hear how he took the hand-playing process of his playing from Morello. That was Morello's thing. He just played it in a rock and blues field. Morello did it in a jazz field. Buddy Rich, when you take certain Buddy Rich patterns and you analyze them, it's exactly what Bonham did. Buddy Rich played it in a jazz 4/4 mentality. Bonham put it in a half shuffle feel and played the same Buddy Rich feel in that half shuffle. So when you go back and you analyze it, and when they start to see the light of, I'm giving them exact examples of what this is, they go, wow. And then once that happens and I put the music on and they hear it, and I say, I'm not trying to turn you into a jazz player. I just want you to steal the ideas the way Bonham did and the way all great drummers do. We steal, we take it, we understand the idea. So as we've said before, we imitate the sound. We then assimilate it by putting it inside of us, and then you take it to that level of innovation. That's where the excitement begins.
But you can't innovate until after you've started the process and after you've assimilated.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So we talk about your teaching, right? And we've talked about 2,500 students. And I would like to point out that most people, if they had 2,500 students and had their own facility and they taught on Skype and they taught actual students, they would not leave. You still travel a lot.
Yeah.
Why do you travel and where do you travel to?
The traveling still inspires me. I was just in Brazil a couple of weeks ago, and just to go there and meet Brazilian drummers that are inspired by hearing me play and wanting to hear these stories, it's the fact that my influence can reach some inspired drummers in Brazil says to me that, you know, even with the power of the internet, it's not until they meet me in person or I meet them in person does that connection become real. You know, when you're watching a computer screen, you can look at somebody that might be alive or dead. You don't really have a relationship with them until you really, and you know this from all your traveling, when you have that relationship with them, you really step into their life. Once you step into their life, then you have the responsibility to lift them. As long as I see the responsibility, which is always my responsibility, to lift that person, I'm on a good path.
You ever thought about writing a book or something? Tell us about your publications.
You know, I got involved with writing drumming books, you know, in the early days, and then I met up with a wonderful student of mine that eventually got on to greater and bigger things, Joe Bergamini, and we started a company, Wisdom Media, and with that we started to publish drum books, our own books and books for other people, and that's always been exciting to me, be involved with ideas that I can get ideas put out, and if sometimes I have an idea, I can't write that book, so I align myself with a student to write it with me, and then we share on the royalties, and I help them live their career. They get their name on the book, they get their bio in the book, it helps their career grow, and we all kind of help this thing putting it together.
So if somebody watching this says, well, I'm just a beginning drummer, which one of your books would you recommend that they look at first?
Several. Play Drums by Felipe Drago was fantastic, by Glenn Chelia, Eighth Note Rock and Beyond. There's some good books. Groove Facility by Rob Hirons. Odd Feelings by Massimo Russo. There's some great books like that. Elements by John Favicchia. My book, It's Your Move, which shows some hand techniques. These are all good books that they can start with that can get them into it. And we have books that are at that point. Then next level books like Open-Handed Playing with Klaus Hessler, where he has 2 volumes out that now takes you to a whole nother level once you have the skills. So we've mapped out a kind of a curriculum-based publishing company that allows you to start someplace, go someplace, and then push you even to a further example.
And you're an open-handed player, right?
I
Tell us why.
I was playing traditional grip and cross-handed playing for 37 years. And I had no problems with it, but when you're starting to play really loud backbeats, and you want to hit that the muscles, there's only 4 muscles, 2 up and 2 down in your left hand grip. When you're hitting that powerfully, you're going to feel I felt good, but I was always clicking the sticks. So then I began to read, at the year 2000, Einstein was voted the greatest mind in the 20th century. So I said, boy, I don't know that much about Einstein. Let me read about Einstein. So I started reading tons of books over a couple of years about Albert Einstein. Very inspired and very, very motivating to lift on how he led his life and what he was able to do in his lifetime. So there was a quote that a journalist asked him that said, Mr. Einstein, it was towards the end of his life, you have opened up people's mind and you've opened up the universe. How have you thought out of your mind to find these ideas? And he answered it by saying, you cannot solve new challenges with old solutions. When I read that line, I said, that's it. This was an old solution when the drum was on the side and they played that way in the old rudimental days. Then all of a sudden, when we moved the drum in front of us and sat down, the challenges changed, but we were using the same old solutions. That's not what Einstein said. So at that moment, I said, I'm changing to match grip, and I'm going to open-handed, because this facility, which is what Cobham started, Billy Cobham in 1959, freed him up, Simon Phillips, all these great, great drummers that have done this, Will Kennedy, fantastic, Klaus Hester. I said, this is going to be, that's where I have to go if I want to start playing drumming for the 21st century. And I made the change.
You and I have done so many clinics together.
Yeah.
I've seen you get up in front of an audience of a bunch of drummers, and I didn't hear you play one drum. You just spoke to them. And I saw people be inspired by just you speaking. I don't know how you do that. It is amazing to me how you do that.
I got to go back to my parents. My parents were just great role models about being concerned about other people. It's not about you, it's about them. And that really was an important area in our household that was talked about at times. What have you done for others today? That was instilled at a younger stage. I don't like playing when I come out, because if I come out and I play, then I'm showing off my ability. If I come out and I talk to the people and get to know them and feel the crowd and see how they laugh at my humor, see how they listen to some of the points that I'm saying, see if they can feel what I'm feeling, when I finally get the audience to a certain level, then when I feel the audience, then I'm ready to play. So I don't play. So I might talk for 5 minutes, I might talk for 25 minutes until I feel that audience is ready for me to then play for them. The other part of it is that my parents always taught us about the essence of life, to matter, to make a difference. So what you do in your life, it's not about me just going there to drum. I've got to try and make a difference with these people. If I can reach them verbally, and then I can take them on a journey dramistically and musically, then I think the journey is going to be a lot more fun.
It's funny that you say you're showing off if you start playing in the beginning. Yesterday there was a kind of a contest at the NAMM show where they were doing double bass drum. How fast can you double bass drum? And I kept telling Liz, who works with us, oh, where's Dom? Where's Dom? I want him to do it. I want him to show you off.
And that foot step kind of came from my sister. My sister's a phenomenal dancer. She tap dancer and jazz dancer, and she just understood feet movement. My sister would sit behind my drums and play great. Dancer. Sit behind and play great. So I said, boy, as a dancer, naturally playing, she played better than I did when we were younger. She had a better feel. I said, I want that. So we had to kind of learn dance and some of those dance techniques and tapping. It's where you really are focusing on your ankle muscle movement. That ankle muscle movement is where the development of the strength comes by. Once that strength is there, you have facility that you never thought you'd have before.
Wasn't Gad a tap dancer? And there's a great...
Absolutely.
Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Fred Astaire was a great drummer also, as was Gene Kelly, as was Gregory Hines. So you think about great dancers that were great drummers. Then you think about great drummers. Buddy Rich was a great tap dancer. Steve Gadd, Louis Bellson, Morello, Papa Joe Jones, Ed Thigpen, Roy Haynes. These guys were great dancers also. So I just started to see the correlation between that. And there are all my students that come to me that want to learn double bass playing. I say, this is great. We're going to learn double pedal. This is fantastic. You guys are going to be great. I want you taking some tap dance lessons. Imagine telling that when I tell someone who comes into my studio with, big hair on their face and they got big hair in their chest and tattoos and, rings hanging and their hair is bushy, and these are the women. I teach in New York. And they come in there and I tell them, you're going to learn tap dancing. They look at me like you're out of your mind. I said, listen, I'm not talking about a pink tutu you're going to wear. And when I take them to a tap dancing class, which I do, and they tap dance, they get it. It's amazing.
I feel that way about singers too. A lot of great singers came from behind the drum set. There's something about the rhythm of learning the drums and putting that into your vocal rhythm. It's kind of like the same thing you're saying with the tap dancing and putting it in the rhythm. It's a great thing.
Buddy Rich sang, Phil Collins, excellent dancer.
Yeah.
So when you start to see the correlation, if dance is a part of our craft, we can't ignore that. That's a part of it. And I tell guys, go take 10 tap dancing lessons and just start to feel, what's tap? Tap is balance, movement, and rhythms. That's what we're trying to accomplish on drum set. So accept the fact that another art form can give us that. Look at the early tap dancing of Shirley Temple with Bojangles and watch some of those movies. What you're going to hear are the jazz time rhythm, chang, changa, chang, changa, da, 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 da. When they trade eights, they're trading eights like we trade eights in drumming, 8 measures. They're doing it. So a lot of the concepts of drumming came from that. Even the jazz opening and close of the hi-hat came from tap dance. Sammy Davis Jr., great drum set player. Mel Torme, great drum set player. Not just a good drum set player, great drum set player. Gregory Hines, I heard him play in New York one day. God rest his soul, what a phenomenal guy. He was a monster drummer. Now, if you go YouTube and watch him dance, gosh, he was so deep. But he played drums so exciting. I'd watch him, and as he was playing drums, and then he would get off and tap dance, I'd say, gosh, I want to go back and learn this. Open-mindedness to me is the key to be able to develop our talent to the highest level.
When we've talked about your teaching, about your playing, about growing up, and you touched briefly on the lessons your parents told you about giving back.
Yeah.
Really what pushes you over the edge in our industry is how much you give back. How important is that to you?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. It's the legacy of my life. The greatest accomplishment I have had in my life have been my children and my family. So to me, if I can give them that fuel of them seeing me still at almost 65 years young, pushing myself without the concept of retirement, I want them to see that if I can push myself and still make a difference, as opposed to retiring and stepping back, if that can happen, that can be the message, that becomes huge, that the example is with our lives. You know, I say the essence is to make a difference, to matter. That means I have to, if I believe in that, that's got to be a way of life. And if it's a way of life, it has to be every day. And if it's every day when I wake up in the morning, I've got to stop and say, today's going to be a great day because it just could very well be my last day. And that's what my next book, Owning Now, is about. We don't own tomorrow. I don't even own later. Too many of my friends now are, just dropping dead and they're healthy. I thought they were healthy. Gone, done. So we hear that. As we hear that, I got to say that every moment that I have, I've got to live this carefully. So with that, I really lead my life that way, like I don't know what tomorrow is. And if my last day is going to be that moment, and I have a moment to reflect, I can say, boy, did I push this all the way.
Well, let me tell you, when it is beyond absurd how many A-list drummers, the top guys that I run into, whether I'm working with them or not, who will tell me at some stage, well, the first clinic I ever went to was Dom Famularo. I was 10 years old when I went to see Dom Famularo, and the numbers are absurd. And I think it's time that we all acknowledge that there is no person in the percussion drumming industry who has given more to the current state of drumming in any event, in any respect, than you have. You have inspired more musicians, you have inspired more people, and our industry would not be where it is if it wasn't just for you. And there's going to come a time where you need to take some appreciation for doing that, which I know you're not comfortable doing, which is why I'm saying it to your face now.
I want to say this on tape. The first drum clinic I ever did, we were both with Tama.
Yeah.
First drum clinic I ever did, you were there. You played too.
Yeah.
And I just was terrible. And I remember telling you and Joe Hibbs after that at a diner, I said, I will never, ever do that again. Never will I do that again. And you took the time to come to my house.
I remember that, yeah. That was great.
And make me play. And then you got this idea, you said, can you get the Billy Joel tapes and can you take the drums off?
Yeah.
Because that's what you do. You create parts for songs.
Yeah.
You're a songwriter's drummer.
Absolutely.
And that's when I got the title from you. I want to thank you right now.
Well, you know, what I saw a little bit, and having known you all the years, going back to Blue Hair and hearing you play at clubs, I always loved your playing because you had a uniqueness to your playing. And even though you might not have been as schooled as other players are, you did something naturally that no school drummer could have achieved. You went to the University of the Street, and that's really where you are like an encyclopedia of knowing what's on albums and drummers and what they played and fills and grooves. With that, I saw something that was there that I said, boy, this is deep what Lib is doing. The clinics are not about big drum solos and all that crazy stuff. It's about sharing what you do. And there are other people that will relate to that who aren't master clinicians as far as technical ability, and they relate to the groove that you played. So when I saw that, I said, God, I don't want to lose liberty of this thing. He's a very important force that's going to help this art form move forward. You did just that. You got the songs, and here it was, you know, you continue to go out there and play. I mean, you come up with ideas of creativity that are totally, I would have never thought about. Down East to Alexa, that groove. I mean, just the way you are. I mean, all these songs have unique sounds of rhythms that you composed. Composition. It's drum set composition. You compose. That's what I wanted people around the world to see, and you do that.
But you know, that's honestly, that's what makes you too both that type of person, because you play who you are.
Yeah.
Right? How you play is the person that you are. Yes.
And that's all you can do. That's all you can do. I mean, I'm still learning this instrument. You know, this constant learner article that I wrote for Frank Corniola talked about, you know, how Morello and Chapin and these guys kept on learning. You know, then I mentioned about Dave Weckl, and Dave Weckl has an online school now, and Dave is another guy that constantly learns. He constantly learns. He's always researching. So there are many artists that are doing this here, and to go out there and experience that they see that even at their middle-age life number, they're still enthusiastic like they were when they were younger. There's a magic in that creates just an excitement that's just beautiful.
How do you feel when you put on a Joe Murillo record, Dave Brubeck or something like that, and you hear Joe? How do you feel now when you listen, now that Joe's gone? And
it's emotional. It's many emotions, because it's emotional, it's happy, it's sad. It brings me back to the lessons. I mean, when I put on Take 5 or Castilian Drums, there's an album that Joe put out live at Carnegie Hall. It's a 2-record set at the time. It was just phenomenal. To hear him play on that was real artistry that he played. The technical facility, the creativity, the ideas, just the sensitivity he played with. When you hear that, you really hear craft at its best. It's beautiful, really beautiful.
You know, Dom, you're no less of an artist in life than Joe was on the drum kit. But as the people watch this video, you know, what do you need to impart? What's the final thing that you would tell young up-and-coming musicians and lovers of life? What would be the message you would want to leave them?
But great question, guys. There's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, you really have to love what you do. You have to love what you do. You got to wake up every morning doing what you love doing. Is that easy? No. Does it take courage? Yeah. But if you go down a path, I've come up to 2 roads in my life, the path of least resistance and the path of most resistance. I never hesitate. I choose the path of most resistance, because that's where I'm going to learn the most. The path of least resistance is way too easy. So I've always taken that path of most resistance. So when you have challenges, face the challenge and learn about the challenge and try to overcome that challenge. To believe in yourself. Everyone's a good person down deep inside. Tap into that and let that come out. Because when people sense that goodness in you, you're going to start to attract other good people. When you attract other good people, they're going to start to relive and feel your passion. If they feel your passion, you now have an ally. I want allies. I create allies in my journey of everyone that I meet, because you never know what one person will tell you that might just be the key to unlock a challenge that I'm having. And sometimes that one person it might be a kid in line. I shake everyone's hand before every event that I'm at. In China, I was at 3,500 people. I went out and I shook everyone's hand before the event. It took me 2.5 hours. But I wanted everyone to feel that, because I wanted to meet the people and talk to them and experience that. So learn from people, learn what's around you. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use it at the ratio that you were blessed with. Listen twice as much than you speak. And those are just really, just go for it. Feel it and go for it. Trust your instinct, and then mostly have fun and make a difference.
You know, Dom, you're a beautiful guy. I want to thank you not only on behalf of the sessions, and as a member of the sessions, I want to tell you that 8 years we've been doing this together has been one of the singular best experiences of my life. I am a better person for knowing you. People that come to see the sessions are better people for hearing you think. Thank you so much. Lid?
I want to say that just sitting here today and doing this interview with you, I am inspired again. Every time I sit across from you at the table when we're having breakfast or dinner or whatever, I get inspired. I truly believe that the drum became man and you are it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, man. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Is it possible you guys can do my eulogy?
We're already working on it.
Okay, thank you so much.